Good afternoon. It is 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. on a Monday night, Eastern Standard Time. And on Facebook and YouTube Live, we do Dialogue with Dozie. And here we are. 3 years in, we do this. And we are so excited that you are here with us tonight for this exciting program. Listen, I have an extraordinary guest tonight. Is we're going to revisit Dr. King's legacy and see how America looks at it now. Okay, I want to introduce my three guests. So blessed to have them on tonight, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves and what they do, where they do it. Okay, I'm gonna start with the lady, my cousin, Daisy Taylor Grimes. Miss Daisy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We are good, sister. We are good.
I think I just did something, Dozell.
You're still on. If we can. You're still with us.
Okay, I don't know what I did here. I lost you here. But I'm happy to be with you today and on this very important day as we celebrate the legacy of Martin Luther King. And I'm excited to see what our conversation is going to be about. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of an organization called VCAP, Volusia County African American Leadership Council. And on that council, every president of every African-American organization in Volusia County sits on that council. So, and our job and mission is to engage our community and to keep the issues before our people. Make a difference.
My cousin Daisy and my cousin Hubert, they are the power couple in Daytona Beach. He's a retired county judge, circuit judge, and he's back practicing law. He couldn't stay out of the. He's back practicing law, and you hear what Daisy's doing. They're very active in the theological community and the social justice community. So we're so glad. Hubert, we kind of alternate. Daisy will be on one time, Hubert next time. Thank you all so much. Also tonight, I didn't have the opportunity to serve with him. I preceded him in Sterling, Illinois, but our good friend, he's been on several times, Jeff Coester. And Jeff, you're going to just tell us a little bit about you and good seeing you on. Jeff, tell us first of all, how cold is it where you are and where are you?
This morning when I got up, it was minus 18.
Ooh.
Yeah,
that's without the wind chill.
You need to repent so you can get out of there.
Oh no, I'm not Jonah. I'm going to stay here.
All right. Tell them where you are and what you do, Jeff.
Well, I'm the pastor at the Big Red Church in Sterling, and I'm proud to announce that Dozell just told me I'm adopted into the family, and I'm a lover of Dr. King, and that's why I'm here.
Bless you, Jeff. Bless you. Thank you, my brother. I hope something we see tonight or do will help warm you through this venture. Also tonight, my good friend, he's always on. He's my God friend, my travel buddy, Pastor Anthony Burrell. I'm gonna let him introduce himself. He's a constant guest host on the show, and we're gonna let him introduce himself. Doc, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. For the listening audience, viewing audience, I'm Dozell's worst nightmare on a golf course. But he is my special friend. I thank God for him. And for this program, I have a program also that I've already done this evening. And it's a great opportunity for us to be able to share, especially on this significant memorial to the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Thank you, Doc. Appreciate it. Here's another one that needs to repent. One needs to get out of Nineveh, and the other one needs to repent about his fantasy level. But anyway, we'll talk about that at another time. I'll get it one day, y'all. He got a good golf game. I'll chase him. Listen, tonight we're gonna look at Dr. King's legacy, and we're gonna look at in the context of 2024. I like the way Madam Producer framed the show. She said, "How does America look at Dr. King in 2024?" Well, first, let's review the legacy and let's look at some intricate pieces of the legacy. And then at the end, let's bring the scope in and see how this America that has a 4-time convicted, twice impeached, twice sued, 3-time divorced, presidential candidate who's leading in the polls, probably our primary tonight, and leading in the polls for the November general election. Let's look at it through the lens of that America. Let's see where we stand. You all can kind of help me with that context. Let's look at what brought Dr. King to power. We got a power-packed show, and we got about less than a half of a minute to do it. But we're going to make it happen tonight. Let's look at what brought Dr. King to power. In my research, and some things I may should have discussed with us off camera, I didn't know that Dr. King was engaged to a member of the Caucasian. He was engaged to a white sister, and his parents told him he needed to break it off, and his friends advised him to break it off because it would not work in the South where the context of his pastorate and services would take place. But Dr. King was brought to power. Of course, he went on, as you know, and married Coretta and brought her back to the South. He was brought to power by the Montgomery bus boycott. And one of the things I learned is that Rosa Parks was not the first person to break that boycott and violate those Jim Crow laws. There was a 15-year-old sister who did it 6 months before. And so Rosa Parks refused to go to the back of the bus. The then Montgomery Improvement Association came together. Dr. King was new pastor in town, pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. He was brought together and he was voted upon by the prevailing clergy to lead this movement. And the thought was he was new in town and would receive, because his roots were not as deep in the city, that he would receive lesser repercussions. He and his family would receive lesser repercussions than all of them. And so that's what brought, the history of that, a 385-day boycott, won the rights for blacks to sit wherever they wanted to on the buses in Montgomery. The Montgomery Improvement Association became the Southern Christian Leadership, SCLC. What are some of you all's facts and remembrances on the genesis of Dr. King's social activism?
Well, let me share something with you, Dozell, that many may not know. During that time, I was a college student, but I was very involved with the NAACP and the union. And the young man that was very influential and assistant, as you know, AFL-CIO was very involved with the civil rights movement and with this march. But Rosa Parks had been handpicked for this challenge. If you go back and look at the NAACP and all of the historical documents, some written and not written, but she was handpicked because she was well respected, she was grounded, and they knew that they could get the community behind her. She had a good record. Her reputation was well respected, and they felt that they could galvanize the community behind her when she was arrested. There is a book, and I'll get that for you, that was written that does share some of that in there, that Rosa Parks was handpicked for this to do that. And I asked her when she came to Bethune-Cookman, when I was working at Bethune-Cookman, we had her as a guest there to talk with our students. And I did ask that question. And she said that there was much work behind the scenes, and it was nothing that, it was not as we perceived it, that she just got on a bus that day and decided that she was going to do that. But it was a planned situation. So I wanted to just share that because there's so much in our history that has not been told, the whole story. And I think it's important that we know the whole story, especially when we talk about this whole civil rights movement. And Martin Luther King, when we talk about Martin Luther King, I think that his coming to Montgomery was divine, because there was a pastor at that church at Dexter Avenue that the members fired him. And many of the pastors may have heard of Reverend Vernon Jones, and they thought that he was too much out there. The church was a church of well-educated African Americans and middle class, and he was truly an activist and did not believe in segregation, and he was doing some things that church could not deal with. So they asked him to leave. They fired him. And who would come next? They never had any idea that it would be the man that would fulfill what Vernon Jones was about. If you don't know about Vernon Jones, read about him being at Dexter Avenue and what happened to him there. He was spun to the membership.
That's good to know. I had no idea of that. That's awesome. Anybody else want to weigh in on his Dr. King, the genesis of what brought? I didn't know that this was planned. I didn't know any of that. That's great news to know. Thank you for your sharing, Daisy. You're going to make me think that you're a deep historian, because I know you're not old enough to be in real time.
But let me say this, Dozell. Thank you for pointing out the fact that even as young as he was chosen because he was young and green.
Yeah.
Amen. As opposed to the older ministers who had roots established in the community. So thank you for pointing out that. Listen, God has his hand in all kinds of situations. Devotionally now, I'm reading the story of Joseph, and you can see how God orchestrated his life and allowed things to happen. And certainly the same with Dr. King. And Sister Daisy, it's Vernon Johns, not Jones.
Vernon John, right, not Jones.
Jones.
Yeah, I was going to correct that, Vernon John.
Yes.
You know of him.
Oh, yeah, he's my fellow Virginian. He's from the great state.
That's right, it sure did. It sure is. And I'm reading a lot about, I started reading a lot about him. I knew about that, but I was doing something for Martin Luther King's celebration. And I wanted to bring that up in a panel discussion that I was in. That's why I believe that God sent Martin Luther King, and it was a divine calling on his life, because there was a Vernon John there before he got there. He was something good. That's right.
Wow. Jeff, I know you were not around during real time, but what does history tell you about the early implications of the bus boycott in Montgomery and what brought that?
I think of Rise, I don't necessarily think of the events. I think of the internal motivators in his character. And let me just point out a couple of those. I think his humanity is what propelled him. You know, he was a great man, and I think you could have put an average man in that situation and not been able to sustain the influence like Dr. King did. But he was a great man. You see that even when he was young. At 15, he went to college. He studied theology. He studied the lives of great men who believed in peace, and he brought that message forward. But also, people don't understand the determination of this man. I wonder how many people know that in 1958, during a book signing at a department store, a woman came up and stabbed him. Mm-hmm. And the letter opener went right next to the aorta. The doctor said that he was within a cough or a sneeze of being killed. And once he went through the surgery and he recovered, he immediately affirmed his commitment to change through peaceful means. And that's quite an extraordinary human being. People don't know that he was arrested at least 29 times, and injustice was the common characteristic of those arrests. For example, one time he was put in jail for being 5 miles over the speed limit. Yeah. You know, it was just ridiculous, the harassment, but he maintained his motivation and just kept going. And along the way, he sought partners. And I think one of the fascinating things that our politicians today have forgotten is that he worked with people who didn't agree with him on every issue. He didn't demand obedience to everything he thought. He found people he could work with across the spectrum. And he said, let's work together. A good change needs to happen. And he helped bring that change. I just have tremendous affection for the way he did things.
That's a more than awesome perspective. And I can very vividly remember, because I was a student. You're going to see a little later in the program. I was a student of his speeches and everything about. In fact, and Madam Producer can attest to this. I'm wearing this coat tonight. This is like twice. What is this? Our third show of the year, and twice I put on a coat. Most of the time I got my cap busted. I got on a sports shirt or something, T-shirt, but I wore this black. Dr. King wore all black, and he always wore black or dark. And there's Dan Lebertop putting his hat on there. Okay, he wore dark or black because it was he thought that the preaching of the gospel was a formal affair, and he thought that it needed to be treated thusly. So I respected Dr. King, and lots of times I dressed in black on the King's Sunday. Yes, it was a little different for us. We celebrated the Lord's table yesterday, and they got the significance. We just did a little mention here. But anyway, I think that's good that you're talking about his character, Jeff. And in those speeches, I can very vividly hear him say, while signing a book, I was stabbed, and the doctor said if I had merely sneezed, and then he would go on a rhetorical oratory. He said, if I had sneezed, I would not have been around for this event. If I had sneezed, I would not have been around to see, to stand and tell America about a dream that I had. I'm so glad that I didn't sneeze, and I'm holding a drama out of that. Let's move on, and man, you guys are great. Let's move on to talking a little bit about the Southern Christian Leadership Committee and his staff. Who sticks out amongst you guys? And I know, Daisy, you and Pastor Burrell, and possibly you too, Jeff. Pastor Jeff, you've had the opportunities to work with some of his staff or be around some of his staff. And I've had some experiences, but I'll share later since I'm the host. Any experiences you all have, any comments about those who worked with him at SCLC back in those days? Jeff, you're right outside the hotbed of it, so if you want to go ahead.
I'm afraid I'm not qualified to really comment effectively on that. I know what we're doing locally, trying to bring change. I know about the organization, the SCLC, but I don't know a lot about the individual players. So I'm going to have to pass there. I don't want to pretend I know something I don't.
That's fine. Guys, take it over.
Well, I've had an opportunity to meet quite a few people. Fred Shuttlesworth, of course, who worked with him. And, of course, I'm a proud graduate of Virginia Union University. And one of his chief lieutenants and organizers was Y.T. Walker, and who then went on to pastor famously in New York City. So he surrounded himself with great people, the Ralph David Abernathy, and on and on and on. So sometimes when we look at the head of an organization, we can talk so much about that person, but anybody, especially as a pastor, listen, if the janitor doesn't do his or her job, we don't have a clean building. If somebody doesn't turn on the lights, if somebody, I'm dealing with the challenge of doing electronic and technological stuff. And praise God for Sister Toya tonight. And I had one of my members ask me yesterday, he says, Reverend Burrell, how come we can't operate this projector? And I was sharing with him, the projector is the soundboard and the control panel and everything is in the back of the building, in the back of the room. And I'm at the front of the room. And you soon find out that you move beyond just being a one-man show. So I'm grateful for all of the people that were around Dr. King and helped him to be who he was.
Well, speaking. Daisy, I'm gonna come right. I'm gonna come right up to you. Let me just say this. Speaking of Y.T. Walker, and you're talking about the team that it makes to make the leader look good or make the leader effective or successful. Y.T. Walker was the organizer for SCLC. He was amongst those with some scholars par excellence, great orators, great preachers, great pastors. But Y.T. Walker was the organizer. Now, don't pat yourself too much on the shoulder because he went to that school in Virginia. Go ahead, Daisy. We're not going to let him talk.
That school in Virginia had some great pastors to come out of there. One that I really admire now is Howard John Wesley. But there are so many others. And my former boss is now the president there. So it's an interesting relationship. But I look at his leadership from a different perspective because so many people think now that everybody at that time what we would perceive as leaders in the African American community, jumped on the ship with Martin Luther King immediately, and that was not true. Right. He had his inner circle with Abernathy and Shuttleworth and White, all of those were there with him. Many of the clergy left him, and we have to admit that. Many of the clergy, there was a great division in the Baptist Association because of Martin Luther King. But young people, you know, they're older now, but you had the Andrew Young, the Julian Bond, the Jackson. So you had that group who really were young lieutenants following him because they believed in him. So though he had that group that was more aligned with him as a clergy, he had a lot of young people who was on the inner circle who supported and was a part of that camp.
So I'm glad you mentioned some of those great names. Andrew Young was a two-time mayor of the city of Atlanta, and he ran unsuccessfully. Unsuccessful to gain a position, but successful in the fact, Jesse Jackson would say, caused a lot from the bottom of the boat. A lot, the Atlanta and the Georgia region has become a region that many black and brown people have gained political acumen because of Andrew Young stepping out and running statewide for governor after the 2 successful terms as mayor. He was one of King's lieutenants, as was the lead lieutenant, of course, was Reverend Dr. Ralph David Abernathy, who there was some concerns because later on, near the very end of his life, and you know, journalists will pop in and try to make the most of it. He made some comments to the effect that stated the king was human, and the king had not, you know, this image that some had propped up of him was not the real king, but the real king was flesh and blood like you and I, and made mistakes. And boy, was he challenged in our community, and he basically won reconciliation from the black community just prior to his passing. And I thank God that he got to see that because he was so candid about the relationship. Some things maybe should not have gotten out because it would be as it was, blown out of proportion, taken out of context. Nothing could diminish the work that this man had done as a drum major for justice. You talk about Wyatt T. Walker. You talk about Julian Bond. Had an opportunity at Bethune-Cookman to over in Rollins College to hear him speak. And Dr. Burrell, actually, if you remember when Fred Shuttlesworth came to that seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, and was designated to go to the airport and pick him up and introduce him. And that was one of the honors of my, at that time, young life. And of course, and you know, probably lose some viewers or whatever, but my hero, the Reverend Dr. Jesse Louis Jackson, who took the mantle, who started out simply as a leading civil rights boycotts there in Greensboro at North Carolina A&T at the lunch counters, and ended up being a part of the movement, and was actually left in Chicago to lead the outreach arm there at that time, which was called Operation Breadbasket, which Reverend Jackson took on and became Operation Push, which was People United to Save Humanity, and then it became the Rainbow Push Coalition. Reverend Jackson ran for president. He was a forerunner of Barack Obama. He ran in 1984 and 1988. Madam Producer, who produces this show, LaToya, was with me in 1988 when if you all will remember that strong run that he made, and he won the Michigan primary and another primary, and all of Time Magazine and Newsweek Magazine and all of those. Of course, the internet is kind of taking that over. But back then, said, "What does Jesse want?" And he says, "I want to be president. That's what I want." He ended up running second to Dukakis at that time. But Madam Producer was with us there in Louisville when we did at First Gethsemane Church, if I'm not mistaken, Pastor Burrell, your church, when he did the rally and it was the last rally before they did a buscade down to Atlanta for the convention, where he delivered one of the most stirring speeches ever to be delivered at the Democratic National Convention. And there have been many political conventions, but his was one of the more memorable ones. So he had great people that came, that branched out from his wings at SCLC. We can never forget pastor in Atlanta, Doc, what's his name, that recently passed? Methodist pastor. He was a short man. They moved him from his church, and then they ended up moving him back. I can't think of his name right now, looking right at his face. But his staff went on to be great and to do great things. Pastor Jeff, when I was in Sterling, we had he's now Representative Jackson. We had Jesse Jackson's son come out. And when we organized the NAACP with Matt Housey and others, Jonathan Jackson came out, and everybody always talked about Jesse being the orator and Jackie being the daughter being the orator. I'm telling you, Jonathan had a brilliant mind. That's why he's now in Congress, and he came out to Sterling, Illinois, and delivered what was the NAACP's opening speech. So as we started that branch there in Sterling. So he had a great staff around him, and there are many others all across the nation whose name we may not have been able to mention or think of. What's some of the things? We got about 3 minutes to break. What's some of the accomplishments or some of the things that you all would say about the staff that work with Reverend Jackson?
Well, one very even tonight is saying it. We did not mention those women. There were many women involved with this movement that were behind the scene, and they get very little credit, but there were many behind the scenes. So I just want to point that out.
And Daisy, you know what? I wish we had some names, because in my research, Coretta came to the South. In fact, he met Coretta through a friend while he was at Boston University working on his PhD, and he asked his friend, who was at the Massachusetts Music Conservatory, did she have any friends, any good Southern girls that he could talk to? And he ended up with Coretta, and once they married and she came south, she had a whole lot to contribute to the movement, but he specifically wanted her in the back burner of serving as a housewife and a support person to him. And we have to remember just how far, when we think of mayors of Atlanta, not public defender, the prosecutor of Atlanta, who now has the 45th president under indictment. When we think of people like that, those positions were nowhere to be thought of across it, not even color lines. Women, period. In fact, women were just voting, just beginning to really vote and be taken seriously as an electorate, person of the electorate. So thank you for bringing that point up.
Well, one thing I'll mention to you all that you know, and she was very involved and she's been noted, and that's Diane Nash. Diane Nash. Look her up. She was really one of the ones that came very early. She was a young college student when she started out.
Okay. So I think we fully understand that to be effective, you got to have good people around you. And from all our recollections and our memory, our recollections and our research kind of proves that we have had Dr. King had great people around. We're going to go to break and have a short conversation with Madam Producer, and Pastor Burrell has a treat for us. GoGigaWorld.com. That is your access to get all of your virtual needs taken care of. GoGigaWorld.com. It says it's all. You saw the video. They got you covered. Hit your boy up. I can tell you all that they can do for you. Or why don't you just go online and chat with them yourself? GoGigaWorld.com. We're grateful to be affiliated with them. I'm asking Madam Producer, who most of you all know is our oldest offspring, Miss Latoya Glenn. And we're going to talk before we go off tonight about the King holiday. But I think, Toya, you guys, well, you and your sisters, year apart, were what, 5 and 6 maybe at that point in 86, the first King holiday. What's some of your memories of that first King holiday? What did we require of you?
Hey there, Dozie Land. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay, fantastic. So I was definitely a jit. So I recall just watching TV, watching a whole bunch of different programming related to Dr. Martin Luther King.
We're going to talk about that a little bit further. You remember the parades? You remember all of the video of him? Was that your first introduction to Dr. King, or had you heard your daddy imitating his speeches or anything along the way prior to that?
It definitely was not my first introduction. You have many books, you have tapes. I heard it, and if I can recall, I do believe my grandmother telling me you were the child at church that did the Dr. Martin Luther King speech at church. So definitely knew about him prior.
So we moved on to Sterling, which was a little bit of a different society. That was kind of devoid of people of color. Was there much orientation to Dr. King? Was there much teaching? That was a holiday. I mean, I know there was no school those days, but what were your impressions there? And even when you moved to South Florida about Dr. King?
His name was mentioned in school, but it wasn't a whole lot of teaching. I'm grateful for the Macedonia Baptist Church because we watched a whole lot of Eyes on the Prize and learned all about Dr. Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement for sure. So it was mostly church. Church is where we really learn Blackness and the historical content and all the wonderful things Black folks have done for this country, in this country.
If you all only knew, this was like pulling teeth from a rhinoceros, getting Madam Producer even to come on audio. Thank you, baby. Appreciate
Thank you. Bless.
Bless you, baby. Okay, so Pastor Burrell is going to set the context for Dr. King's social justice ministry. He has some excerpts from the letter to a Birmingham jail, and we're going to talk about the implications of that. That's along the journey of his activism.
Well, let me say this, Pastor Dozell. I used to every year make sure I read this letter to Birmingham jail. And I haven't done it the last 2 or 3 years, but the Lord just had me to revisit it today. And one of the things I think people need to understand that while incarcerated, he didn't have access to paper and everything. And a lot of this was written on toilet paper.
Yes, sir.
Just think of that. Just think of that. And the thing that so impresses me, being a seminarian, as are you, and I'm pretty sure Brother Jeff, we learned a lot of stuff for the test. Amen. No. This man sitting in a jail cell didn't have access to a theological library. And when he starts quoting Paul Tillich and Martin Buber, Reinhold Niebuhr, and I mean, you just like, wow, you're blown away that he was able, and he just had such a way with words. Let me read, not talk. Dr. King says, we know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I've never yet engaged in a direct action movement that was well timed according to the timetable of those who have not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For years now, I've heard the words wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with a piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. It has been a tranquilizing thalidomide, relieving the emotional stress for a moment, only to give birth to an ill-formed infant of frustration. We must come to see with the distinguished jurist of yesterday that justice too long delayed is justice denied. We've waited more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. The nations of Asia and Africa are moving with jet-like speed toward the goal of political independence, and we still creep at horse and buggy pace toward the gaining of a cup of coffee at a lunch counter. I guess it is easy for those who've never felt the stinging dart of segregation to say, wait. But when you've seen your vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will and drown your brothers and sisters at whim, when you've seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, brutalize, and even kill young black brothers and sisters with impunity, when you see the vast majority of your 20 million Negro brothers and sisters smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society, when you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she can't go to the public amusement park that has just been advertised on television, and see tears welling up in her little eyes when she is told that Funtown is closed to colored children, and see the depressing clouds of inferiority begin to form in her little mental sky, and see her begin to distort her little personality by unconsciously developing a bitterness toward white people. When you have to concoct an answer for the 5-year-old son asking in agonizing pathos, Daddy, why do white people treat colored people so mean? When you take a cross-country drive and find it necessary to sleep night after night in the uncomfortable corners of your automobile because no motel will accept you. When you are humiliated day in and day out by nagging signs that read white and colored. When your first name becomes nigger and your middle name becomes boy, however old you are, and your last name becomes John. And when your wife and your mother are never given the respected title Mrs. When you're harried by day and haunted by night by the fact that you are a Negro, living constantly at tiptoe stance, never quite knowing what to expect next, and plagued with inner fears and outer resentments, when you're forever fighting a degenerating sense of nobodiness, then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over, and men are no longer willing to be plunged into an abyss of injustice where they experience the blackness of corroding despair. I hope, sirs, you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience.
Guys, what are your impressions of that?
Wish I could apologize for the whole culture that allowed that. It's an outrage. God made us all in his image. We're not different. It's a moral offense. It's a stain on our country that it happened at all.
Now, Jeff, I'm going to ask you about that a little later. Just let's remember that, and we'll talk about that. We got about 8 minutes. We're going to talk about that, the latter of those 8 minutes. Daisy, what's your impressions?
My impression is that that's to me, one of the most powerful messages that he's ever given. But you know what concerns me? You can change that date, and much of what he was saying then is relevant now. We are in the same fight now, and there is a strong desire in this country to even take us back. And I don't know if my people really understand that is what's going on.
Let's pick that up and let's say that for the last segment. Pastor, you read it. What's your
Well, the thing that gets me, Dozell, we reside here in the Sunshine State of Florida, and of course, we're home to Disney World. We're home to Busch Gardens, and I mean, so many people make such a big deal out of being able to go to an amusement park. But my goodness, he talked about what it was like 40 years ago. You know what I'm saying? No, 60 years ago.
Yeah, 60 years ago.
He talked about what it was like for his daughter to see that commercial,
Yeah.
you know, and he had to tell her, well, Funtown is not accessible and available to you. Boy, wow. And you know what? I say this, and I'll be quiet. You don't give a Baptist preacher a microphone. The way our parents raised us, and they did their best to shield us from all of this foolishness that was going on around us.
Yeah.
They were a covering. They were a covering. You know what I'm saying? Boy, I tell you, they were nothing short of geniuses for the things that they did for us and helped us to navigate and negotiate the minefields of racism, prejudice, and discrimination and bigotry.
Daisy is well. Actually, Daisy and Jeff have just given great insight, and we're gonna conclude with that in just a second.
But Dozell, but let me say something. Piggyback on Pastor Burrell statement, how our parents had to do it. But you know, parents are having to do it now today because little kids in school that I approach, because you know how involved I am with the system here, we got to tell them why they vote on keeping African American history out, why they banning books that deal with blackness and all of that. We have to tell that to kids today. Parents have to, you know, so that's why I said we're still going through this.
So that's basically how we're going to conclude this in just a second, looking at where we are today in context of Dr. King's legacy. I want to just a few notes about that. The language was pivotal. Dr. King referred to us as Negro. The only way we refer to that now is we refer to us amongst ourselves. I can hear Pastor Burrell telling me, Negro, hurry up and get here so I can get this butt beaten on this golf course. That's the way we got to do that now. We jokingly call each other, but colored. Those were the things. And he used Jeff, he used what you and I have been trained, and we've been trained. We don't use sexist language. He talked about mankind. He talked about man, known to man. Now we say known to humans. Those are the kind of things that you talk about 60 years later. And wow, Funtown, I heard you talk about Disney World. It was Funtown there back then. Wow, just looking back. Want to rush on because we got a hard time facing this timeline. I want to talk a little bit about rush on to the assassination. Jeff, do you have any remembrance of April the 4th, 1968?
Oh, yes, absolutely I do, because it was really a shattering of innocence.
Wow.
I was raised in a sundown city, and I didn't understand what that was. My family was not racist in their expressions, and my dad sat at the table one night before the assassination and said, that man needs to be careful. Somebody's going to hurt him. And I thought, why in the world would anybody do that? I didn't know it didn't register with me that you were black. So when there was talk of hurting him or killing him, I didn't understand that. And when he was killed, it just kind of took the sense of safety away. And I was 12, almost 12, and it was really changing.
I was almost 9, Dozell, and man, I tell you, Jeff, it's ironic. I think 10 or 15 minutes before we got word that he had been assassinated, my mother said the exact same thing to me.
Wow.
She said he needs to go and not like we tell little children now, you better go set yourself down, but she says he needs to step back. He needs to take it easy. There was that sense of foreboding that understood that there were those who did not like what he was doing, you know? And for my mom to say that, and, you know, we had the trusted voice way back then of Walter Cronkite.
Yeah.
And for him to come on and announce that Dr. King had been assassinated, it was like there was such a feeling of emptiness. Of blankness. You just didn't know what to feel.
Yeah.
Daisy?
Well, I was in college when it happened. So been kind of lost when you're 10, you're 9 years old, 6, all that. But it was a sense of loss of hope for us as college students. And all of you remember there was a mass rioting started immediately afterwards. So I can tell you what I remember. Richard V. Moore, who was our president,
Dr. Moore.
that's right, called all the students in. And he said, y'all are not going to burn down Daytona. You are going home. You are going home. And they arranged with Mr. Huger, they arranged to get us out of Daytona Beach.
Oh, wow. That's real history.
Out of Daytona Beach. We were one of the few schools in the South that nothing happened because they got us out of, they said, you going home. You would not do that here. You would not do, because they knew that the emotions were high and, you know, we wanted to do something. And so, but it I think for all of us here, it was a sense of hope. We had lost hope. I mean, there was so much put into him, and you were angry. You wanted to do something.
Wow.
And a lot of people don't understand about why the rioting happened. I think that African Americans just said enough is enough. Enough is enough, and they ran not defending rioting, but I think that emotionally they had to get it out some kind of way.
Like Pastor Burrell's mother, my dad made a statement because Dr. King had gone to Memphis, he had gone back to Atlanta, and there was a march. And at that march, the strategy was to use young people. And there was some people that were injured, not severely, but there were some injuries. And there was, like you mentioned earlier, Daisy, there was a lot of frustration in the movement about Dr. King's strategies and so forth. And so my daddy said, man, he better watch it. You know, he better get people hurt. He better be careful. There was a lot of, inwardly, there was a lot of frustration. So the night he was shot, you know, some of you may have known I was raised in Jacksonville at a boy. My dad ran a boys' home, was a superintendent of the boys' home. And one of the other staff members' sons came in and told us that they heard that Dr. King had been shot. My mother and I went in front of the black and white TV, and there came a voiceover, there came a poster, special bulletin, CBS special bulletin, and Dan Rather came over and said, Dr. King is dead. And almost immediately, we live blocks from Florida Avenue, which is now A. Philip Randolph Avenue. Immediately, you could hear the fire trucks, you could hear what was going on there locally. My dad came home the night he and I went back and saw some of the aftermath. And it almost reminds you of 2020, the George Floyd aftermath. Like you said, Daisy, we were frustrated. We were young. We couldn't do nothing. You were in college. Dr. Moore protected you. Aunt Ruby protected you guys. But we were angry. You talk about the sense of hopelessness. One of the more searing images of that night, well, not that night, but at the funeral, was seeing Sidney Poitier following the caisson just broken in tears. Yeah. And that was one of the more, and Jesse Jackson had that angry look. He was wearing a black shirt and jeans. Dr. King used to always talk about it. In fact, right before he was shot, so say, Jesse, tonight we're dressing up now. So those were some of the things. But some of the aftermath of the assassination was Dr. King was getting involved with the Vietnam War. And he was very influential as a speaker. And he was able to affect a lot of young white college students. And America was concerned about it. J. Edgar Hoover had convinced the Attorney General to sign what was supposed to be a temporary order to tap his phones. And J. Edgar Hoover had made it he was head of the FBI, made it a permanent thing. And so they sent a letter to him trying to convince the FBI that he should commit suicide. There were several things they had done to try to get to him. In fact, the night of the assassination, FBI agents were some of the first on the scenes, along with Memphis police officers. They were in a joint task force and across the street from him. Ironically, it was 60 days, I think, later that James Earl Ray was arrested at Heathrow Airport over there in London. And as he spoke about conspiracy, there was a taint down the line before he passed there was a taint involvement with U.S. government, and it was quickly squashed and shut down. And the thought was that America had him shot because of the implications of him speaking out against the Vietnam War. What do you all know or think about that? We got to get out of here.
It's not hard to believe. I mean, Hoover was out of control. Just not hard to believe. I wish it was.
Yeah.
I agree with Pastor Jeff. You don't want to believe it, but we know this country, and we know the history of J. Edgar Hoover. You know of his hate, and for Martin Luther King. I believe that it was more. I do believe it was a conspiracy. I do.
Some people try to say it was a poor people's campaign that he was organizing. Nobody cared about that. He had many marches, but his influence with young white students and I mean, speaking out against the war, which had a lot of financial implications, was a very Pastor Burrell, on this last go around, I'm gonna ask you, and we got about 2 minutes total for this. I'm gonna ask you to start us out with it. How does America look at Dr. King's legacy in 2024? I like the way Madam Producer framed this.
I think it's a positive one. We can look back. This was, I know, at least the second year, probably more, that our local ABC affiliate, Channel 10, broadcast the entire Martin Luther King Jr. parade from Miami. Oh, yeah. So that was phenomenal. And the positivity. I think we need to make sure that MLK Jr. Day is more than just wearing a T-shirt with his image, a likeness on it. It's more than just barbecuing and partying and drinking. You know what I'm saying? But that we do some serious recollection and serious reminiscing and serious strategizing and answer the question that he asked, which is, where do we go from here?
Great question. Guys?
Can I just jump in on that? I think that's absolutely right. And the way I think it can happen the most easily is through cordial relationships. I ask my friends to educate me, and many of them are very capable, but there's so much about Dr. King, even though we feel positive, we don't know who he was. We don't know about his integrity and his character, what he went through. And in terms of Black history in general, people like me who were raised in all white communities, we're ignorant and need to be educated. I want to be. For example, does anybody know that not long ago a 25-year-old Black engineer created a glove that turned sign language into speech? Does anybody know that in 1864 the first woman doctor was graduated from college? These are things that probably should be known. If it was the first white woman, that would be taught. But there's a legacy that's larger, and the contributions people have made are big. In every field of study and every field of research or science, Black people have been involved. And all I ever learned about was George Washington Carver.
Wow. Sister Daisy, we got about 45 seconds.
4 or 5 seconds. I think Martin Luther King, I would tell you what I think he would say now. Why? Why? Why are we still where we are?
Wow.
Why are we still where we are? What have we not done as a people to work toward fulfilling that dream? Why, America, in 2024, are we still where we are?
Wow.
I think you would be disappointed.
Don't you all wish we had more voices promoting the idea of change through peaceful means? He was so effective. And now, whether you're talking about the politicians or whoever, maybe it's the result of talk radio, but everybody's inflammatory.
Pastor Jeff, Dozell, let me share this with Pastor Jeff. I'm participating in a book review with a predominantly white church, United Methodist Church here in Alma, and it's called Teaching White People Black History. I'm going to send it to Dozell because this is a predominantly white church but we're going to go through that together as a few of us as African Americans to come over, and it's teaching white America Black history.
That's a great idea. I love that idea. And
I'll give the book to Dozell, and he can share with you, Reverend Burrell. But it's
Amen.
very interesting.
Amen.
Wow.
Amen. I would say this, Brother Jeff. I've never had an opportunity to meet you, but we need more Jeff Coesters.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we do.
come on over and I'll buy you dinner anytime.
Amen. I mean,
Won't you going up to that 18 degree weather right now and talk to him about?
Warm.
Maybe Pastor Jeff needs to come down here to
I know
Florida.
that's right.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all sing hymns, Pastor Jeff, but I tease my brother. Used to tease my brother all the time. He told me I was sore because told him I didn't play golf in weather under 60 degrees. And I told him there was a song in the hymn book that says, "Cheer up, my brother, live in the sunshine. We'll understand it, oh, by and by."
Bye-bye.
Yeah, guys, I cannot say thank you enough. My cousin and sister Daisy Taylor Grimes, my dear brother. I wish we had served together, but thank God for technology. Pastor Jeff Coester and my dear brother, Pastor Anthony Burrell. Thank you all so very, very much. And Madam Producer, thank you for joining in tonight. We thank you so much. We're going to close out a little special way tonight, and I'm going to do a little part in that. On February the 4th, exactly 2 months before Dr. King was murdered in Memphis, he spoke these words at the crescendo of his sermon, and it was played at his funeral. And it said this: "I'd like for someone to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. did try to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. If you want to say that I tried to be right on the war question, I want you to be able to say that day I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. And I want you to be able to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind. And he's allowed me song.
If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can show somebody he is traveling around, then my living shall not be in vain. If I can point somebody to lamb once slain. If I can tell somebody that it in my living shall not, it won't be in vain.